What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode in the Nourish with Renata podcast. It is February, the month of love, and what I'm doing in my holistic nutrition membership, Nourish, is taking this month a step further by focusing on radical self-love, and more specifically, its benefit to your health and hormones. So, what does self-love have to do with hormones or with your health? That's exactly what we're discussing today in this episode, and I think you'll come away with the science as well as the tangible steps that you can take to increase your self-love today. So, what is self-love? I particularly like this definition from the Brain and Behavior Research Foundation. Self-love is a state of appreciation for oneself that grows from actions that support a physical, psychological, and spiritual growth. Self-love means having a high regard for your own well-being and happiness. Self-love means taking care of your own needs and not sacrificing your well-being to please others. Self-love means not settling for less than you deserve. Now, in a world where so much importance is placed on outward productivity, and particularly for women and moms, on being self-sacrificing and doing so much more for others than yourself, just the idea of practicing self-love can sometimes seem selfish or even indulgent. So why focus on self-love, especially if it feels out of the norm? Well, let me explain just some of the positive health benefits that can occur when we focus on self-love, as well as the negative impacts when we focus on the opposite, more stress and more self-criticism. The first thing to know is two very important hormones, cortisol and oxytocin. Cortisol is the one that you've probably heard of most. That is the stress hormone. And the second one, oxytocin, this is called the pleasure hormone, also known as the cuddle connection hormone or the love hormone. It is the hormone that gets produced by the body when we feel pleasure, when we feel joy, when we feel love. Whereas cortisol, the stress hormone, is what is released when we're in stressful situations, whether they be external situations like someone cutting you off when you're driving down the road, or internal situations like if you're stressing about finances, about relationships, etc. The interesting thing here is that both cortisol and oxytocin are connected because when cortisol is increased, oxytocin decreases. And the opposite is true. When oxytocin increases, cortisol decreases. So if we continue to live in a state of high or chronic stress, this creates a cascading negative impact on our health, leading to conditions like anxiety, depression, as well as gut issues, headaches, heart disease, high blood pressure, and sleep issues. Now, conversely, when we practice self-love or self-compassion or even self-care, what we're doing is we're boosting oxytocin, thus reducing cortisol. This has a positive ripple effect on other hormones like dopamine and serotonin, which are two of our other feel-good hormones. It also has other positive health benefits like mentally you have more positive self-talk, higher self-esteem, as well as less anxiety and better sleep. You even see inflammation in the body reduce when oxytocin and self-love are increased. You might also experience your PMS symptoms reducing because oxytocin increasing has a positive benefit to your sex hormone balance, namely your estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Your blood sugar levels become more regulated because your insulin sensitivity improves. There are literally so many benefits, health-wise, to practicing and elevating your self-love. Studies even show something very interesting when it comes to experiencing an oxytocin boost before a stressful event. So if we practice boosting our oxytocin, boosting our self-love before a stressful experience, the level of stress that we experience is actually lower than if we just went into that experience without the oxytocin boost. So our stress levels decrease as a mere byproduct of starting the day or starting with an oxytocin boost before you go into something stressful. This is why I love talking about oxytocin because it is truly a powerful hormone. And this is why self-love is so important because it helps to boost oxytocin, balances your sex hormones, and decreases your cortisol levels. So how do you actually boost self-love and thus oxytocin? This is a fantastic question. And in my experience, I've come up with basically 4 steps to boosting your self-love. The first step is self-awareness, noticing what's happening in your brain and your body when you're faced with triggering circumstances that may elicit a particular response. For example, when you see yourself in a mirror at a clothing store when trying on a new piece of clothing, what comes up for you? What thoughts come up? How does your body feel? Just noticing those thoughts and feelings is the first step. Step 2 is self-acceptance, having full and complete acceptance of who you are at your core, no matter what external situations are occurring. Accepting yourself because of all the amazing things that make you unique and different, and not accepting yourself in spite of those things. So going back to the example of when you see yourself in the mirror at a store wearing a new piece of clothing, accepting that it is simply just clothing that you're trying on. It doesn't have to have a particular meaning in terms of trying on clothing. Although, even with societal conditioning, many thoughts and feelings might be coming up. Accepting all those thoughts, accepting all those feelings, and knowing that they don't have to mean anything other than you trying on clothes. We are meaning makers. We're constantly talking about to ourselves and to other people about what things mean. And if we have true self-acceptance, it's taking on or taking in all of those thoughts and feelings and knowing it doesn't have to mean anything about our identity. Step 3 is building self-trust, doing what your brain and body tell you need in order to feel more centered and fulfilled. So this can be things like, for instance, if we're in the store, we're trying on clothing and it doesn't fit. Trusting that it is not because there is something wrong with my body, it is simply that the clothing is too small, for instance, so I could go up in a size. When I trust what my brain and body tell me, and I'm not making up stories about what things mean, then this actually builds my self-trust because I'm telling myself, actually, I'm recognizing, I'm noticing the self-awareness of, these are some stories I've been telling myself. I've also been accepting those stories and also making sure I'm telling myself they don't have to mean anything. When I do that, I'm trusting myself. I'm building up that muscle of trust. Then I can do what my body needs to feel better. I can do what my brain needs to feel better, such as getting a different sized piece of clothing, such as not allowing myself to dive into the pits of negative self-talk and then overindulging perhaps in some junk food. Instead, I might go for a walk. I might allow myself to have people around me that will lift me up. When I trust what my brain and body tell me it needs, what I'm actually doing is boosting oxytocin. I'm leaning into the things, the activities that help me to feel more of a sense of joy, pleasure, and love. And when I do this consistently, when I check in with myself, see what I need, and I do those things, I am building more self-trust. And finally, the fourth and final step is self-belief. So when you build more self-awareness, self-acceptance, and self-trust, self-belief grows because of it. And it's because you understand who you are at your core, and you know that no matter what goes on around you that might trigger you, you have got your own back. You are able to fully support yourself because you know who you are and you know what works well for you, and you know that whatever you set your mind to, you can achieve it because you are your biggest supporter. That's what self-love is. So I go into even more detail in these steps in my holistic nutrition membership, Nourish, so that the ladies in that membership can actually start to implement each of these steps throughout the month and notice a tangible improvement to their self-love. And this is why every single day in the Nourish membership, I'm posting radical self-love prompts so that we can start noticing, we can start trusting, we can start believing in ourselves even more and building up that self-love muscle. So if you want to find out more about Nourish the membership, make sure to reach out to me via DM on Instagram. You'll notice all of my Instagram information and other ways to connect with me are in the show notes below. So that is what we're focusing on this month in Nourish the membership, radical self-love, taking it a step further and deeply and truthfully understanding who we are at our core and loving ourselves because of that. Like I said, you can always reach out to me to join the membership, or if you're interested in booking a 20-minute free consultation, the link for that is below as well. Have a great rest of your Wellness Wednesday, guys, and I'll talk to you again very soon. Bye.